This is one area that is still recovering from Hurricane Helene. It is now preparing, so as it recovers, you are also preparing for Hurricane Milton coming in midweek. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel is in Madeira Beach, Florida, as people prepare for yet another storm. Madeira Beach, this is just to the north of Treasure Island. This is an area, those barrier islands, Mike, where we have the storm surge potential that could be anywhere from 9 feet to 12 feet. It was already historic with Helene, and now we're looking at something potentially worse. Not looking good, you know?
No, not at all. And for these poor folks here that have lost basically everything in their buildings, and you can see the piles of debris, and this stretches for miles and miles up and down Gulf Boulevard. Now, they've done a good job of getting it all out here, and they've been running dump trucks almost around the clock since they started the cleanup, which was just 10 days ago. Remember, this hit on a Thursday, a week ago Thursday. So when this makes landfall Wednesday, it'll be a 13-day window. So what they're concerned about, obviously, winds can blow this corrugated aluminum around, although it's in here pretty good right now. And then you've got another surge issue. And the surge right here, based on what I was told where I'm standing, was about 9 or 10 feet where I'm standing. So it's going to go way up here, and this stuff's going to start floating around. Whether they can get all this picked up by Wednesday when we get the worst of Hurricane Milton remains to be seen. They're working as hard as they can. If you look that way, the piles are gone, but we'll just walk down here and take a look at some of the damage and debris. Remember, the water got into the first floor of all these homes, in some cases the second floor. I've been trying to find a debris line, which is like a horizontal stain on the stucco here, and I don't see one. But trust me, the water was up there near those second floor windows when that surge came in from Helene Thursday a week ago. So all kinds of debris. There's a lot of mattresses piled up. We got a golf course over here, a putt-putt now. Power's on across the area. They've got the power back on and the water is running. But a lot of people have not come back because they've lost all their furnishings and whatever's inside unless they're way high up above the second floor. So there you go. Marissa and Craig, just a heartbreaking scene. It reminds me of covering tornado aftermath, but instead of just a small area like a neighborhood, this just goes for miles and miles up and down the coast here from Clearwater all the way south towards Anna Maria Island and all the way down towards Lido and Siesta Key.
Yeah, when you talk about miles and miles, that's a big concern. Do they just take it far inland for now, just to get it off of the beach and away from potential storm surge and those strong winds?
Well, I'm sure they're taking it to a dump or a deposition site. They've got, there's some information out there where you can take debris, and it's been open 24/7. But yesterday I saw trucks lined up over here to go over the causeway, and what happened is they get about 10 or 12 in a row, and then they get a police escort out of the area to where they're taking it, and more trucks are staged, more dump trucks are staged as we go through the evening hours last night. Now, they stopped that process overnight. I suspect they'll start that again this morning now that we have light here around 7:30. The sun came up, but a lot of debris left to go. My gut says they're not going to be able to get all of this up by the time Milton comes here on Wednesday. It goes all the way up to Reddington Shores. Reddington Beach was at about a 7 or 8 minute drive. It's piled up continuously. And it takes a lot of dump trucks and a lot of loads and a lot of time to get this out of here. Well, you can imagine the concern with wind gusts in excess of 100 miles an hour again, and also a surge right now forecast of 8 to 12 feet in this location.
You got a lot of material there that could be acting as sails and flying around as well.
I was going to say, between the surge and then the winds, I mean, you have very dangerous debris that's going to be lofted into the air or pushed further inland.
And what they've done since the storm hit is they bulldozed all the sand. This road was not passable, maybe with a four-wheel drive, maybe, and they bulldozed all the sand back into the parking lots and off the road. So that's why you can actually see the asphalt. But we're going to have another surge and another big wave of sand coming back in from the Gulf Coast, and they'll repeat the process all over again just 2 weeks later.
I think that's the other part of the story, as you alluded to, Mike, as you said. We're talking about less than 2 weeks, two landfalling major hurricanes, and the wounds are still very fresh, and a lot of people still in mourning. Not to forget that out of Pinellas County, Florida, we had just over a dozen deaths related to Helene, and now we're getting into Milton. So we'll be checking in with you, Mike, throughout the morning. I know you'll be on it. Our live coverage, everybody, of Hurricane Milton, it will continue here on Fox Weather. We are expecting Milton to slam the Gulf Coast of Florida. Right, it's right within pretty much the center of the cone from the NHC. And Tampa and its neighboring communities are still in recovery mode from Hurricane Helene, but also now preparing for Hurricane Milton. Fox Weather storm specialist Mike Seidel is in Madeira Beach, Florida. This is as people are, I think now the rush is on, right? You talked about some of the debris earlier, Mike, and the big piles of it stretching several feet high that now the county is trying to hurry up and get rid of, but also the sand. When you talk about the surge from Helene brought all that sand on shore, which I'm assuming is what we're still looking at behind you.
Yeah, this is what they plowed from Gulf Boulevard and streets inland a block or two out here closer to the beach. And this morning we've got local residents, yes, using that sand to make sandbags for their property. I just walked up on these folks. Good morning. Good morning. Going through it again.
Hi.
What's your name?
Michelle.
Michelle. And how far inland do you live?
We're on the other side. We're in Snell Isle.
Okay, how did you fare with Helene? The surge estimated by what I was told about 9 feet here. Did you get water in your house?
We did not get water in our house. We're in Eden Isle, and so, but we were one of the lucky few. Maybe 8 homes in Eden didn't get it, but everyone in Snell did.
Are you in A or B?
We're in A.
You're in
Zone A.
And you didn't get water in your house. That's excellent.
But it came right up to the garage.
So now you're concerned about this time, maybe it gets higher?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you've got free sand and you got sandbags.
Yeah. A friend of ours was driving home from South Carolina. He stopped at Home Depot and got the bags.
Excellent.
So
Well,
we're doing what we can.
It's just incredible, isn't it?
It really
I mean, it's just.
I was born and raised, all of us, and never seen anything like this before.
Well, back to back in 11 days.
It's unbelievable.
I've never. We had Francis and Jean in 04 that hit the same area around Stewart, but that was 25 days apart. This is going to be 11 days, and another one.
Unprecedented, except for 1921.
Well, I wasn't around then. You weren't around either.
I wasn't either.
Okay. Well, continued success, and we hope for the best. It's supposed to weaken a little bit before it gets to land, but maybe it'll
From
croak.
your lips to God's ears.
Yes, exactly. We'll do the. Huh?
Who cares if it weakens?
Who cares if well?
Still a problem.
Yeah, it's still a problem even if it weakens. Yeah, that's exactly right. Even if it goes down to a 3 before landfall, or even a 2, it's still going to have that push of water into these coastal areas. Right now, the Storm Surge Watch is forecasting from the Hurricane Center between 8 and 12 feet. And as we saw in the Big Bend with Helene, it went from 8 to 12 to 10 to 15, 12 to 18, and I believe it ended up before landfall 15 to 20. And the only thing I've seen is an unofficial report that the surge there in Keaton Beach was 19 feet. We're not expecting that, but still, we set records last time, guys, and let's hope we don't reset the records from Helene, which was Thursday a week ago.
And you know what, Mike? I wanted to update you because we just got this into the studio as well from the National Hurricane Center. They have Milton now intensifying to a Category 4 hurricane. At this very moment, Milton, a Category 4 hurricane with those maximum sustained winds increasing to 150 miles per hour and the pressure falling to 940. So let me ask you as well, we're talking about this 2-week stretch of major hurricanes making landfall in Florida, but Milton, I mean, if people haven't checked in since Friday, Mike, they saw maybe not, I don't know. It doesn't look like it'll really turn into anything. To now, we're dealing with some potentially catastrophic, life-threatening, absolutely impacts for Florida yet again.
Well, remember, we were watching that disturbance come through the Gulf, and that kind of fizzled out. The models lost it. But then we had the remnants of a depression coming from the Pacific across Central America. So this actually had its seedlings in the eastern Pacific, came over, and then the thunderstorms just blew up starting a couple of days ago. And now, within 2 days, we go from a bunch of thunderstorms to an invest, now to a Cat 4 hurricane. So this is about as rapid as you'll ever see a storm on the planet intensify, or a tropical system intensify, and it doesn't bode well. All we can hope for is the shear and that dry air hits the system sooner rather than later and takes a little edge off the hit here. But again, all this debris that doesn't get picked up, the sand, it's all going back to the east, back inland on Wednesday night and Thursday.
Michael, Mike, I tell you what, to hear the person say that it doesn't matter, the strength of it, it's key. And I think that we've got to make sure that people get that message out there. Hearing from Matthew here, Matthew Blue, meteorologist behind the scenes, 90-mile-per-hour wind increase in 24 hours.
And how does that stack up? I'd have to go back and look at the climatology, but that's got to be near the top of the list of some of the more famous, well-known Cat 4s to Cat 5s and how fast they increased. I remember Opal in 95, we went to bed as a Cat 1. First weekend of October 95, woke up as a Cat 3. But that's, 8 to 10 hours. So look at the numbers and see how that stands. But the bottom line is it's got the fuel. Now, when it gets up to a Cat 4 or Cat 5, sometimes it'll oscillate a little bit. And we'll have the eye wall replacement cycles as it peaks. But we couldn't, we could get that shear in like right now. That would be helpful. But it's not really forecast until we get into Wednesday. Right. And as you mentioned earlier, if it starts feeling the shear 6 to 8 hours before landfall, it really isn't going to, the difference between 135 mile an hour Cat 4 and a 120 mile an hour Cat 3, it's not much different when you talk about the surge and the fact that it's already pushing the water this way ahead of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talk about category, it really just relates to the strong winds. And granted, those are going to be very strong, dangerous winds, but it doesn't take into account the surge. And that's going to be a big thing moving forward. Yep. Mike, we'll continue to check in with you. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say with Helene, remember, Helene did not directly hit here. It hit up in the Big Bend where they had, as I mentioned, an unofficial surge of 15 plus feet. Here, Clearwater was, I think, 8.6. That was the record. So they didn't take a direct hit here. It was just going by. This is coming in, and it's not coming in at perpendicular angle or right angle, but almost coming straight in at a right angle. And that is the worst case scenario for this coast, anywhere along and south of where it comes in. And we're not sure exactly where that's going to be, whether it's going to be Pinellas County, where we are, up towards Clearwater, here, towards Manatee, or down towards Sarasota County. But the bottom line is there's still going to be a lot of wind and surge, even if you're on the north side of the track. Surge values are still forecast upwards of 5 to 8 feet at this point. Yeah, fine-tuning all the details. Landfall expected Wednesday. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel, always appreciate your input. We'll check in with you in about an hour. Our live coverage of Hurricane Milton, again, it is now already a Category 4 hurricane that way. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel is in Madeira Beach, Florida, as people prepare yet again. I think, Mike, it's too tough, as we heard Brian say, pinpoint that exact landfall location. But the fact is you have a powerful hurricane bringing the threat of storm surge yet again. This is an area, Madeira Beach, where we do have evacuations that will be mandatory. Yes, and they're getting ready as best they can. We showed you earlier, and I want to pull up the tape. We'll run that tape from earlier. I believe it's ready to load and play on Fox Weather. The dump truck's getting a police escort coming down Gulf Boulevard with the sirens blaring. This is about an hour ago. It's the second one we've seen so far this morning coming down Gulf Boulevard. There had to be, with this one, at least 40 or 50 trucks that went by empty, and they're going north. They're going to get more debris and take it out to some landfill somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but away from the surge zone. There you go. You don't usually see police escorts for dump trucks. Meanwhile, here we go. Look at this. This is debris that's been put out here in the past 2 hours. We walked down the sidewalk this morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. It was not here. And they had a Bobcat out here bringing more debris out here. And in the distance, there's more debris. And from there down, it's non-stop. It's just continuous. And what they're trying to do is get this out of the way, because we've got another big surge due in here on Wednesday night. 8 to 12 feet here. That's the forecast right now. That could go up. And we also have the wind. So we've got all this debris that can float around and get picked up by the wind, and they're trying to clean it up as best they can. Something I want to point out across the street, which I just noticed when they boarded up here at this dentist office. Look at that. Look at that piece of lumber. 04 Charlie Francis. Then you go 017, that was Irma. I was in Miami for that. And then you got Jose, you've got Ian from 2 years ago. We were down at Fort Myers, the beach and the causeway. Boy, that was nasty. A 5 kept coming in as a 4. And then you had Helene from, 10 days ago. So what we got now, they're going to have to add on their Milton when they get back or when they use that again. Hopefully, they will not have to board up again after this one. My gosh, can you imagine? So that piece of lumber has seen a lot of action, a lot of wind, a lot of surge. And unfortunately, the water is going to come up again. It'll cross the highway. That's almost a given. The surge here, I estimated, based on what folks are telling me, the locals, up about 9 feet, maybe 10. And that was about a half a block inland. This was all covered with salt water. We're going to see how the vegetation does. A lot of this is going to get killed because of all the salt water. You can see over here, these leaves are all crunchy already. So I have a feeling a lot of the landscaping is toast because of the salt water. You can see all the leaves on the ground. And there's going to be another big push of sand. We'll come down here and show you what we've got going. Ben is my photographer, Ben West, and we'll show you the sand that came from all this, from Gulf Boulevard and even a block and a half inland. They pushed it all into this parking lot. And here it is. Very reminiscent of covering snowstorms and maybe a big lake effect dump in Buffalo and the lake belts. That's not long away. Here it is, October. This is the mess we have, and this is just going to come right back into the streets as we get into Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night. So Marissa and Craig, it's the same old, but this is a direct hit. Remember, Helene was not a direct hit. It got indirect. We had the push of water. The direct hit was up in the Big Bend. The Big Bend's going to be spared this time from the worst of Milton. And so will North Carolina and South Carolina and really Georgia. This doesn't have any way of going north. It's going to go east and northeast out into the Atlantic. No way this is going to get up into those areas that were ravaged by Helene almost 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think, the only little bit of good news we've been able to find, Mike, is that once Milton gets through Florida, it heads east into the Atlantic. But until then, we have a lot of dangers out ahead of us.
Right.
Yeah, Fox
but
weather.
You may have noticed on the 11 a.m. update that when it makes landfall Wednesday evening, it's a 125 mile an hour Cat 3 versus what it's going to be tomorrow, 160 mile an hour or higher Cat 5. If there's any glimmer of hope, a 5 versus a mid-range 3 is much better. I don't know how that's going to impact the surge. I think the surge is going to still be terrific and catastrophic, but at least the wind's going to back off a little bit, maybe some 30 to 40 miles an hour before landfall Wednesday evening.
Yeah, if we can bring down the wind a little bit, because that's what you tend to see further inland. But of course, the surge at the coast is why they want people to evacuate, because either way, it could be very dangerous, if not life-threatening. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel, always great to check in with you and bring us that perspective, Mike, because it's still very raw from Helene in many of these areas.
There's Mike Seidel right now. He is in the Tampa Bay region. He's at Madeira Beach, which is all the way on the west side of town there, kind of a barrier island, if I'm not mistaken. Pinellas County, this is one of the spots that took a pretty devastating hit, at least from Helene. How does it look out there right now, Mike? I mean, between the cleanup from Helene and preparing for this, I mean, what are people doing?
They're trying to get ready for the next one. It just hit here a week ago Thursday, and we'll pan down the street once again because you see the piles of debris. This is a new pile, and as far as the eye can see, basically, down Gulf Boulevard, looking north towards Reddington and those areas, all you have is debris. Now, we've had escorts, police escorts of dump trucks. I want to show you some video from that earlier, and what they've been doing is taking the dump trucks up and down Gulf Boulevard and getting them loaded up with debris and getting it out of here to a landfill, because what they don't want is the surge to come in with hurricane force wind gusts, and we got blowing sand already. We've got gusty winds from the east, about 15, 20 miles an hour. They don't want this debris to become projectiles or float away, because that's what's going to happen. Regardless of where the hurricane comes in, really, there's going to be water here. The depth is in question, although right now the Hurricane Center is forecasting a storm surge here between 8 and 12 feet. We'll see if those numbers go up. The only promising thing is the official forecast does weaken the hurricane from a now Cat 5 down to a mid-range Cat 3 before landfall on Wednesday. So that saves us a little bit of wind. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Here's what you see. All this sand was on the streets here in Madeira Beach from Thursday a week ago when we had that surge come in. I estimated, based on talking to locals and how high the water got on buildings, at about 9 to 10 feet. I've checked all these buildings here. They're all stucco. I can't find a water line. So unlike river flooding where the water stays up for a while, the surge comes up and goes and you have the waves sloshing around, so you don't have a line of debris, or I haven't seen any around here. So locals have been coming in and filling up sandbags, and also we've got a construction crew. They're trying to get this heavy equipment, this metal, out of here, and they're going to take that all the way inland to Highway 19. That was here through Helene, but it did get jostled around, believe it or not, because of that surge. Remember, you got the surge, and then you had those huge destructive waves on top of the surge. And if you've ever been hit by a wave on the ocean or Gulf, even a 3-foot wave will knock you down. So think about the force of the water. So we're just waiting for those watches, storm surge watches and hurricane watches already to be upgraded to warnings. Now it's just a matter of time. Fortunately today it's been dry, even some sunshine. Tomorrow we don't expect a lot of rain in this area, so that's a good couple of days to get what you need to do, to get it done. The issue here on many of these properties is all the contents, everything in the interior were trashed. The buildings are fine. I mean, look at this. No windows were blown out here. The power's back on. But if you're below the second floor, and even on some second floors, the surge came in. So we were just, planning for the worst, hoping for the best. Maybe that shear will kick in a bit earlier, and then we won't have as much wind. But I don't see any way at this point we're going to get around just a disastrous surge, maybe even higher than the surge from Helene was almost 2 weeks ago. And remember, Helene took a direct hit into the Big Bend of Florida, and not here. They got the push, and the winds gusted 60, 70 miles an hour. So we're looking at potentially a higher surge, and we're also looking at certainly stronger wind gusts easily as it comes in Wednesday night. They've got that data point right on the coast, right around Tampa Bay at 7 p.m. Eastern. But again, plus or minus, depending on how it tracks over the next 48 hours.
So, Mike, explain to me what a situation would look like, and I'm curious if people that live there kind of know the wide possibility of situations that could happen with the track of the storm, right? Obviously, if it goes just a little bit north of the Tampa Bay region, it's kind of a worst-case scenario, nightmare scenario. You get all that water pushed into the bay, and a lot of places underwater there. But explain to me what the situation would be if it went a little bit south of Tampa Bay, where you're still getting the really strong wind. The surge then would not be quite as bad, but you would still get some on approach, right?
Exactly. In fact, the area is right now expected to be north of the track. The surge forecast, I believe, if you check me right, up north of Tarpon Springs is 5 to 10 feet versus 8 to 12. Yes, there's still going to be surge, but it won't last as long. It won't be as high. And then the winds will go offshore and blow it out. So yes, you're exactly right. You get that surge early on, but then as the hurricane approaches to the south, it's going to blow the water. So we'll see how it does make a difference on the surge, but it's not like if you're north of where it comes in, you're not going to have any surge at all. That couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah, so it's basically, it's either a little bit bad or catastrophic, right? It's kind of one of those situations. Okay, there's Mike Seidel. He is in Pinellas County. Again, that's a spot that was hard hit by Hurricane Helene. We'll check back in a bit, where we have Mike Seidel right now, and I want to go out live to him. So, Mike, you were, I believe, weren't you out on St. Pete Beach? I'm trying to remember. We had so many different reporters out in different places. But how high did the water get during Helene, and how high could it get with this particular storm, given the worst-case scenario?
Ari, nothing official, but I was talking to locals yesterday, and they showed me where the water got on one of the buildings across the street about a block inland, and about 9 feet. It was probably higher here on the beach. In fact, this is the first time today we've been out on the beach. We thought we'd show it to you to see what it looks like. And yes, it was ravaged. You don't see a lot of debris or anything. Everything went inland, and they've had to scrape it up and pile it up. But notice the palm trees, their roots are showing. So a lot of sand has been picked up and was deposited, and you can see the mountains of sand in the parking lot here just off Gulf Boulevard. So it gives you an idea how much sand they lost here. It naturally will be replenished over time. Gulf of Mexico couldn't be quieter today. boy, is that really going to change in the next day and a half to 2 days. By Wednesday, we're looking at a storm surge, Ari. They're saying 8 to 12 feet. Again, it's all about where the center comes on shore. But if it does 8 to 12 feet, that's the highest number, I believe, that the Weather Service has forecasted before for Tampa Bay. That would be utter disaster. That's worse than Helene. Clearwater got up to, I think, 8.6 feet on the gauge, and that was their record of recent memory. But I want to show you these buildings, these condos where a lot of folks live or vacation. These are built for hurricanes. And if you look around, Ben will go in a little bit tighter here. There are no windows blown out. The roof is fine. It's those clay roofs. And as far as the eye can see, you know, they look livable, and they most likely are, unless some water got blown in through the windows, except on the lower floor. Now, this lower floor is up a little bit, but it definitely got water in the lower floor, as well as some of these other condos and apartments looking down the beach. Looks like that pier in the distance. I'm not sure, not speaking from fact, but you see the pylon, the poles, the telephone poles in the water, and you don't see the pier. So part of that may have been taken out by the surge from Helene just 11 days ago. So we're looking at another big surge coming in. The thing that is at least, what's the word, makes me a little bit happy is the fact that the forecast from the Hurricane Center weakens this to a Cat 3. So it takes it from where it is now, 160 miles an hour, down to a 125 Cat 3 at landfall Wednesday evening. That'll help us in the wind department. But as far as surge, probably not so, because when a hurricane weakens, the wind field expands. That'll mean probably the surge certainly down the coast, Fort Myers, Naples, Marco, some of the areas that had issues with Helene, maybe a higher surge than this time around. And we're going to have the surge here. No matter what, there's going to be a storm surge. Does it get to 12 feet? Remains to be seen. But it certainly is going to be another devastating hit. And if it comes right into Tampa Bay, it will be the first direct hit in over 100 years. So, Ari, a lot on the table. All we can hope for is that shear kicks in earlier and starts to tear apart at the storm as it comes our way on Wednesday, later Wednesday and Wednesday night.
Yeah, Mike, what's the best case scenario for the Tampa Bay area? And in that best case scenario, or I guess least bad scenario is what we should call it, you know, what kind of storm surge do we end up with? Let's say it takes a track a pretty decent amount to the south. What ends up happening? How does that pan out?
Well, if you look at the forecast now, areas north of where the Hurricane Center says it's going to come in, they have a surge of 5 to 10 feet up through the Nature Coast, up to Cedar Key. Remember, Cedar Key set a record with 9 feet with Helene. So even if it comes into the south of Tampa Bay, we're still going to have a surge coming in ahead of the storm. And then what happens, the wind goes offshore as it makes landfall and it blows the water out. So I don't see how we're going to get around a surge, I would say, as maybe as serious as it was before. Hopefully not. We'll see what happens. Maybe this year eats away at it sooner. I mean, we've seen intensity forecasts are not, you know, they're not exact. They're not perfect by any means. Track forecasting has gotten better. Intensity forecasts, not so much in recent memory. So we'll see what happens. I mean, the thing just blew up explosively, but we've seen hurricanes that wind down pretty quickly too. That's what we hope and pray for the folks here in the west coast of Florida who just dealt with Helene 11 days ago. I've never seen this happen before. I mentioned earlier, Ari, back in 2004, that very busy season with 4 landfalls in Florida, we had this. I remember being on the Intercoastal, West Palm Beach and Palm Beach, Labor Day weekend. That came in and ended up coming in to Hutchinson Island, which is up around Stuart, Florida. And then 25 days later, we had Gene, another hurricane, that came in and hit the same location, 25 days apart. Now, in this case, Helene did not make a landfall here. It made a landfall up in the Big Bend. So it's not really apples and apples, but it does give you an idea of how rare it is to have an area impacted by 2 major hurricanes, although maybe not a landfall, 2 major hurricanes less than 2 weeks apart.
And, you know, the other thing with the storm surge situation is I feel like if it goes south, you know, it's not just a perfect north to south coastline, right? You know, you've got inlets and things like that. You got to think about kind of the eastern sides of some of these barrier islands and things like that. So it's a very nuanced situation, and some great info there from a very experienced man who's
Madeira Beach, Florida. That's right next to Treasure Island. That's one of the communities I spent time in a couple of weeks back, or less than that, with Helene. Mike, how are these folks getting ready for another major? They got brushed by one in Helene, and it generated a a record surge. This one looks like a potential direct hit.
Potentially, and I just got the warning on one of my phones, emergency alert from the Manatee County Emergency Management calling for an evacuation for level A, level B, level C, A, B, and C evacuation zones. Storm surge are saying 10 to 15 feet now. I just checked, the Hurricane Center is saying 8 to 12. Not that it matters, 8 to 12, 10 to 15. We don't want 10 to 15, but I'm not sure if that's an update. The Hurricane Center is going to pass around at 5 p.m. Eastern. Or I'm not sure. I'm just telling you what I just got on one of my phones for Manatee County mandatory evacuations A, B, and C. That's more than they evacuated for Helene. So they're expecting a higher surge. We know Tampa, Clearwater Beach, that area, Pinellas County, just up the coast, hit a record 8.6 feet. Records in recent memory going back to about 1950. Meanwhile, here in Madeira Beach, north of Clearwater, we still have debris lining the streets. We've had dump trucks coming up and down with police escorts all day long, trying to get rid of as much debris as they can. There are also piles next to various buildings. It's not all going to get picked up by Wednesday. That's a guarantee. There's so much out there. We've only had 10 days. We're also seeing a lot of this. We're seeing a lot of cars that had saltwater intrusion being towed away, flatbed trucks. We just saw one towed down the street. Here comes another one. So tow truck operators are out here in force trying to get these cars to some location, whether the insurance companies have picked up the tab or not. I did talk to a friend of mine yesterday, and she told me that one of her friends had already gotten a check cut for their vehicle, and that was, 10 days ago now, 10 or 11 days ago. So some of the insurance companies turning around fairly fast. And things have calmed down. Not as much traffic out here on Gulf Boulevard, but we're just awaiting the 5 o'clock advisory, expecting watches for surge and hurricane to go to warnings at 5. That would be not out of the question. I think that's going to happen. And we'll see if they up the surge based on what's going on. But remember, the models have been forecasting a weakening hurricane as it approaches the coast on Wednesday. And the current official forecast from the Hurricane Center is a Cat 3, 125 mile an hour hurricane at landfall Wednesday, which cuts down the wind speed from 160 or from 175 to 120. That's a 55 mile an hour decrease. We'll take whatever we can get at this point.
Yeah, except that wind field will be getting bigger, Mike. To your point, that makes
Right.
the bigger surge. I had a friend, they had 2 cars totaled, and they did get those covered by insurance, but now you have to be really safe with this next go around. When you consider that where you are in Pinellas County, 10,000 homes just in that county took some level of water, and now there's another major heading in that direction. It's
Wow.
it's a scary situation. That's Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel. Wait, what's that? Sorry,
that
Mike.
Number. That's incredible.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that number, 10,000 homes. You know, we don't have a lot of homes here, a lot of condos. And what I mentioned earlier, these were all built hurricane-proof. So the windows are fine, the roofs are fine. The only issue with a lot of these are the surge.
Yep.
First floor, maybe first and second floor.
100.
But otherwise, they're livable.
Yeah.
Certainly. Once the power, while the power's on now, it's going to go back off, and then it will come back on again at some point, hopefully soon.
Yeah,
after Milton hits.
That's the question, right? At some point, if you lose power and you're there, it becomes an uncomfortable and at times dangerous situation when you go extended period of time down in Florida without power like that. It's a whole complicated setup, and we'll be talking with you about it. We'll be checking back in. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel down in Madeira Beach, Florida. Thank you.
Been in a lot of storms. Thanks a lot for the report there, Mike. Seidel, we'll check back in with you in just a little bit.